my fiancée forged documents and sold my $400K house behind my back to save her parents from bankruptcy. But when I found the scheduled showings, I called the police, and the criminal charges left them speechless. I'm 34 years old. I work in logistics for a distribution company, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago still keeps me up some nights, wondering how I didn't see the signs earlier. Basically, my fiancée tried to sell my house behind my back to pay her parents' debts. And when I say sell my house, I mean literally put my property on the market without me knowing anything, with forged documents and the whole complete show. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I bought the house like 6 years ago, because that's important to understand why this destroyed me so much. Buying that house was probably the biggest achievement of my life up to that point. I mean, I don't come from a family with money or anything like that. My parents were always working class, and everything I have I basically got by breaking my back, working since I was 18. I spent years saving every penny I could. I worked double shifts. I skipped vacations. I lived with 2 roommates in a tiny apartment where my bed barely fit, all so I could put together the down payment for that house. When I finally bought it, I was like 28, and I remember I cried the day I signed the papers. Sounds corny, but it's the truth. Because I felt like I had finally achieved something solid, something that was mine, and that nobody could take away from me. It's a 3-bedroom house. Nothing luxurious, but it has a decent backyard and a garage. It's in a quiet neighborhood where people wave at you when you walk by. You know, that kind of place where you feel like you can put down roots. I met Christina like 2 years after buying the house. It was at a get-together with mutual friends, one of those casual weekend parties where everyone brings something to eat and you end up playing board games until late. She was nice, had that energy that makes you feel comfortable immediately. And when we started talking, we discovered we had a ton of things in common. We liked the same terrible science fiction movies. We both hated cilantro with a passion. Things like that seem silly, but make you feel connection. We started dating, and the truth is, the first months were great. She was attentive, affectionate, made me laugh, and I was convinced I had found someone special. After like a year of being together, she started staying at my house more and more often until she basically lived there, although officially she still had her apartment with a friend. It didn't bother me at all. On the contrary, I liked coming home from work and finding her there, cooking together on weekends, that kind of stuff that makes a house feel like a home. Things started getting weird like a year ago when Christina's parents started having serious financial problems. Turns out they had made some stupid investments. I don't know exactly what because Christina was never very clear with the details, but basically they had put their house up as collateral for a business loan that went bad, and now the bank was chasing them and threatening to foreclose. Christina was devastated by the situation. She cried often talking on the phone with her mom, and I consoled her as best I could, told her things were going to work out, that her parents were going to find a solution. She started hinting that maybe I could help them financially. She never said it directly at first. It was more like casual comments like, "My dad says with $50,000 they could save themselves," or, "I wish we had that amount of money saved somewhere." I explained to her several times that I didn't have that kind of liquid money, that everything I had saved after buying the house was for emergencies and maybe someday expanding the kitchen. And she seemed to understand it, or at least that's what I thought. Looking back, I should have noticed something was wrong when Christina started behaving strangely like 4 months ago. She became super secretive with her phone, like she took it to the bathroom, put it face down when we were watching TV, got up in the middle of the night to check messages. When I asked her what was wrong, she told me it was stress about her parents' situation, that she couldn't sleep thinking about them losing their house. I believed her because, well, why wouldn't I believe her? We had been together almost 3 years at that point. We had already talked about getting married. We had even started looking at rings online, although we hadn't bought anything yet. She also started asking weird questions about the house, things that had never interested her before, like how much exactly I had paid, if I still owed a lot on the mortgage, how much it was worth now, according to properties in the neighborhood that had sold recently. I thought maybe she was trying to better understand finances because we lived together, and it even seemed mature of her, so I answered everything without suspecting anything. The bomb dropped on a Tuesday afternoon like 3 months ago. I was leaving work when a package arrived by courier at the office, which was already weird because nobody sent me things there. It was a big envelope from a real estate agency. I didn't even know. And when I opened it, I found a bunch of documents, professional photos of my house from all angles, printed brochures with the address and a listing price, the whole complete package of a property that was being sold. I stood there in my work parking lot reading these papers over and over, trying to process what the hell I was seeing. The price they had listed was like $400,000, which is more or less what the house is worth according to the market, and there were scheduled showing dates for the next few days. I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. My first thought was that there was some mistake, that they had confused addresses or something. But no, there was my house, my backyard, even the garage door that has that dent from when the delivery guy hit it with his truck 2 years ago. I called the agency immediately and spoke with the agent who was supposedly handling the sale, a guy named Mark something. I told him there was a huge mistake because that was my house and I wasn't selling it, and he was quiet for a second before saying he had been working with the property owner, Christina, that she had signed all the necessary papers and they already had showings scheduled for that same week. I told him that was impossible, that Christina didn't own anything, that the house was 100% mine, and he started sounding nervous, saying he had all the documents in order, that Christina had presented a deed and everything. I asked him to send me copies of everything he had, and he said he was going to consult with his supervisor, that he'd call me back. I hung up the phone and sat there in my car for I don't know how long, probably like half an hour, trying to understand what the fuck was happening. I had Christina forged documents to sell my house? Really? It couldn't be. There had to be another explanation. I drove home faster than I should have driven, almost ran a red light because my brain was somewhere else. Christina was in the living room watching TV when I arrived, all casual like nothing, and I came in with the package in my hand and threw it on the couch at her. I said, "What is this? Explain to me what the fuck this is." She looked at the papers and I saw her turn pale, like her face lost all color in 2 seconds. She tried to say something, but I didn't let her. I started yelling at her, which I almost never do because I'm not someone who yells, but I was so furious and so scared at the same time that I couldn't control myself. I asked her how she had done that, how she had thought she could sell my house without me knowing, if she understood that was a crime, that it was fraud. Christina started crying and saying she was so sorry, that she was desperate, that her parents were going to lose everything and she didn't know what else to do, that she planned to pay me back later when her parents recovered financially. I told her that made no sense, that even if she sold the house, I would receive the money because it was in my name. And she admitted she had forged a deed where I supposedly transferred the property to her, that she had paid someone she knew to make the fake documents. I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't process that the person I had planned to marry, who I shared my bed with every night, had been planning to steal my house for who knows how long. I asked her how long she had been doing this, and she said like 2 months, that she had already found interested buyers and was about to close the deal. 2 months? I mean, she had been preparing this elaborate scam for 2 months, talking with real estate agents, showing my house to strangers, all while I worked and trusted her completely. Christina then completely changed her attitude, went from crying and asking for forgiveness to being angry at me, saying I was selfish, that I had this big house while her parents were going to be on the street, that if I really loved her, I would help her. I told her she was completely crazy, that what she had done was illegal and I was going to call the police, and she told me not to dare, that if I did that, she was going to say I had been abusing her, that I was going to ruin her life on purpose. In that moment, I knew I didn't know this person at all, that everything I had thought about her was a lie, because the Christina I knew would never have said something like that, would never have threatened me that way. I told her she had to leave my house immediately, to pack her things and go, and she refused, saying she technically lived there and I couldn't kick her out just like that. I called a friend who's a lawyer, William Jackson, and explained the situation while Christina kept yelling at me in the background. William told me to document everything, to take photos of the fake documents, to record conversations if I could, and that tomorrow we would go see what legal options I had. That night was probably the worst of my life. Christina stayed in the guest room and I couldn't even sleep. I stayed awake in my room with the door locked because I no longer trusted her at all. I kept going over everything in my head, thinking about all the times she had had access to my personal documents, to my computer, to everything, and how she had used it to plan this. The next day, I went with William to his office and showed him everything: the documents from the agency, the fake papers Christina had made, text messages where she had told her mom she almost had the money figured out. William explained to me that this was severe fraud, that Christina could go to prison for this, and that I needed to report it immediately before she tried to do more damage. He asked me if I was sure I wanted to go ahead with criminal charges, and I told him yes, that I had no choice, that if I let her get away with it, who knows what else she'd be capable of doing. We filed the charges that same afternoon, and the police went to the house to talk to Christina. She acted like a victim the whole time, crying and saying I was falsely accusing her, that she had never done anything wrong. But when the officers showed her the evidence, she couldn't keep denying it. They took her in for questioning and let her go that same day with a citation for court. But before leaving, she called to yell at me that I had ruined her life, that I was going to regret it. I changed the locks on the house immediately. That same night, I hired an emergency locksmith because I was panicked that she would try to get in or damage something. I also installed security cameras at all the entrances to the house, cameras that record 24/7 and sync with my phone, because I was already totally paranoid that Christina or her family would try to do something else, and I was right to be paranoid because things got worse. Christina started a social media campaign saying I was an abuser, that I had falsely accused her of a crime she didn't commit, that I had taken advantage of her for years. She posted a long post on Facebook telling a completely distorted version of our relationship, saying I had manipulated her into leaving her job and depending on me financially, that I controlled her and isolated her from her family. A bunch of lies that sounded convincing if you didn't know the truth. Some mutual friends believed her. Like people I considered, close friends were suddenly sending me messages asking if it was true I had abused her. And when I tried to explain what really happened, some didn't believe me, said I was trying to justify my behavior. It was horrible. I felt like I was losing not just Christina but my whole social life too, because she was painting this image of me as a monster, and people were swallowing it. 2 weeks after the initial incident, my security cameras caught something that still makes me nervous when I think about it. It was like 2 in the morning, and the cameras detected movement in the backyard. I checked the video from my phone and saw Christina and her dad trying to force the back door. He had something that looked like a crowbar, and she was shining a flashlight. I called 911 immediately while watching them on the screen and told the operators I had intruders trying to break into my house, that I had live video of what was happening. The police arrived like in 5 minutes, which was incredibly fast, and caught Christina and her dad still on my property. When the cops asked them what they were doing there, Christina's dad said they were trying to recover Christina's things that I supposedly hadn't let her take, but I had packed all her stuff and left it at her mom's house days before, so that excuse didn't work at all. They arrested both of them for trespassing and attempted burglary, and when they reviewed the complete camera footage, they discovered it wasn't the first time Christina had been lurking around my house. There were recordings of her passing by the street several times, standing outside looking at the windows, even once trying to look through the garage window. It was creepy to realize I had been being watched without knowing it, and it made me wonder what else she had been doing that I didn't know about. Christina's dad got out on bail the next day, but Christina stayed detained a bit longer because she already had the pending fraud charges, and the judge considered her a flight risk. When they finally let her out, her mom came to my house to beg me to drop the charges, that Christina had made a mistake but didn't deserve to go to prison, that I was destroying her family. I told her Christina had made her own decisions and now had to face the consequences. And the mom started yelling at me that I was cruel, that I had no heart. How could I do this to someone I had loved? But it didn't end there, because Christina decided to play one more card. She sent me a text message saying she was pregnant, that the baby was mine, and that if I didn't drop the charges, she was going to have the baby and I would never meet it. My heart sank when I read that, because if it was true, it changed everything. I couldn't just ignore that maybe I was going to be a father. I replied that I needed proof, that I wanted her to take a pregnancy test with me present, and she agreed. We went to a clinic 2 days later, each with our lawyers because I wasn't going anywhere near her without witnesses anymore, and surprise, surprise, the test came back negative. Christina tried to say maybe it was too early to detect it, But the doctor said, according to the dates she had given, it should be detectable, and that she probably wasn't pregnant. We asked her to get a blood test, which is more sensitive, and she refused, which basically confirmed it had all been another lie to manipulate me. Her lawyer looked mortified, like he clearly didn't know Christina was going to try that tactic. And on the way back, I just felt empty. Like every time I thought Christina couldn't sink lower, she found a new way to surprise me. Christina's lawyer sent a ridiculous demand letter to my lawyer like a month later, saying Christina deserved compensation because she had lived in my house for years and had contributed to the household, and that technically she had a right to a portion of the property under some law they made up. They were asking for like $100,000 as fair compensation for her time and effort, and said if I didn't pay, they were going to start a civil lawsuit. William laughed when he read the letter, told me it was one of the most absurd things he had seen in his career, that they had no legal basis to claim anything because Christina had never paid rent, had never contributed to the mortgage, and in fact had committed fraud trying to steal the property. William sent a devastating response where he basically said if they wanted to proceed with the civil lawsuit, he was going to countersue for emotional damages, stress, the costs of changing the locks and the security cameras, everything, and that he was also going to make sure the criminal charges against Christina resulted in the maximum possible sentence. We never heard from that lawyer again about the civil lawsuit. The criminal case took several months to completely resolve. There were preliminary hearings, plea negotiations, all that long and exhausting legal process you see in movies, but is 1,000 times more tedious in real life. Christina's lawyer tried to negotiate a deal where she would only pay a fine with no prison time, but the prosecutor wasn't willing to be that lenient because the fraud Christina had committed was pretty elaborate and had involved forgery of official documents, which is technically a federal crime. In the end, Christina accepted a deal, where she pleaded guilty to real estate fraud and attempted identity theft, received 3 years probation, had to pay like $15,000 in fines and restitution, and has to do 500 hours of community service. Her dad also received a similar deal for the attempted break-in, with probation and community service. It's not the perfect justice part of me wanted to see. Like part of me wanted them to go to prison for what they did to me. But my lawyer explained that criminal trials are unpredictable, and this outcome guaranteed Christina would have a criminal record and could never try something like that again without facing much more severe consequences. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Helen Martinez, like 2 months after everything exploded, because I realized I wasn't processing things well. I had trouble sleeping. Every time I heard a strange noise in the house, I got up to check the cameras. I couldn't trust anyone. Even with my close friends, I found myself being skeptical of everything they said or did. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that what I was experiencing was betrayal, trauma, which is apparently super common when someone close betrays you in such a fundamental way. We spent months working on rebuilding my ability to trust, on understanding that not everyone is like Christina, on processing the guilt I felt for not seeing the signs before. Because I did feel guilty. I kept thinking I should have noticed something, that I was an idiot for not suspecting when she started acting weird, that maybe if I had been more attentive, none of this would have happened. Dr. Martinez constantly reminded me that I wasn't responsible for Christina's decisions, that she had chosen to do what she did, and that the fact that I trusted my partner didn't make me stupid. It made me human. It's been like 6 months since all this started, and I'm in a better place now. Although there are still difficult days. The criminal charges are all resolved. Christina. It is serving her probation, and as far as I know, she's living with her parents who finally lost their house anyway, despite all of Christina's efforts to save it. I installed an even more advanced security system in the house. I have smart locks I can control from my phone, and honestly, I feel safer that way. Although part of me hates that I have to live with that level of paranoia in my own house. Some of the friends who believed, Christina eventually apologized to me after the details of the case became public, but there are others who never spoke to me again, and I guess that's okay. Because if they were so quick to believe her, without even asking my version, they probably weren't such good friends to begin with. The hardest thing has been learning to trust again, Doctor. Martinez says, I'm going to need time, and it's completely normal for me to be cautious after what happened. I've started going out a bit again, nothing serious, just casual dates with new people, and I realize I have this voice in my head now that questions everything, that looks for red flags in every little thing someone says or does. I try not to let that voice control me completely because I know it's not fair to the new people I meet. They have nothing to do with what Christina did. But it's hard to turn off that part of your brain once it's activated. Last week, I went out with a girl who seemed nice, and at some point in the date, she asked where I lived, and I felt immediate panic, like my heart started racing, and I had to excuse myself to go to the bathroom and breathe. It's ridiculous, I know, because it was just a normal first date question, but my brain automatically thought of Christina asking about the house and using that information against me. I don't know how long it's going to take until I feel completely normal again, if that's even possible. Doctor Martinez says, what happened changed my way of seeing relationships and trust in a fundamental way, and that the goal isn't to go back to being like I was before, but to integrate this experience into who I am now and learn to live with more wisdom, but without becoming completely closed off. I'm trying. I really am trying. But there are days where I just want to stay in my house with the doors locked and never trust anyone ever again. On the other hand, there are also good days where I can see I came out of this stronger in some way, that now I know how to set boundaries better, that I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me again. I learned that love shouldn't cost you your peace of mind or your security. That if someone really loves you, they're not going to manipulate you or betray you that way, no matter what problems they're facing. The house is still mine. That's what's important at the end of the day. Christina didn't manage to steal what took me years of hard work to get, and that means something. Every time I come in and see my living room, my kitchen, my backyard, I remind myself that this is mine, that I protected it, that I defended myself. Sometimes my friends ask me if I regret filing charges against Christina, if I feel I was too hard on her, and my answer is always the same. I don't regret it for a second. What she did was criminal, period, and she deserved to face consequences for her actions. The fact that we were in a relationship didn't give her the right to destroy my life for her family problems, and the fact that her parents were in financial trouble didn't justify what she did. Part of being an adult is understanding that your actions have consequences, and Christina learned that lesson the hard way. Lately, I've been thinking about selling the house and moving somewhere else, starting over in some place where there aren't so many memories connected to Christina. But every time I seriously consider doing it, I stop, because doing it would feel like letting her win somehow. She's not going to get me out of my house, not even indirectly, because this house represents everything I worked for and everything I achieved without anyone's help. So I'm going to stay here. I'm going to keep living my life. I'm going to keep improving the property little by little like I always planned to do it. A few weeks ago, I finally started that kitchen renovation project I had been postponing for years, hired a contractor and everything, and there's something symbolic in that. In taking something Christina tried to steal from me and making it better, more mine than ever. I'm still in therapy and probably will continue for a good while longer because Dr. Martinez has helped me process not just what happened with Christina, but a bunch of other things about myself I hadn't explored before. I've learned that I tend to ignore red flags because I want to believe the best in people, that I value peace to the point of avoiding confrontations until it's too late, and that I have to work on speaking up for myself earlier, instead of waiting until things explode. These are hard lessons to learn at 34, but I guess better late than never, right? At least now I know what I'm not going to tolerate in future relationships. I have clearer boundaries, and I'm not afraid to cut ties with people who show manipulative or dishonest behavior. Yesterday, I ran into Christina's mom at the supermarket. It was super awkward because she saw me and stared at me for a few seconds before turning around and walking in the opposite direction. It didn't bother me at all. Honestly, I'd rather not have to interact with her or anyone from that family ever again. It made me think about how her whole family was probably aware of Christina's plan, or at least suspected something, because how could they not know? Christina needed the money specifically for them, and the amounts being handled weren't small. Maybe they didn't know the exact details, but they definitely knew she was doing something questionable to get the money. That makes me feel a bit better about pressing charges, because it wasn't just Christina who tried to take advantage of me. It was her whole family who was willing to benefit from her fraud without asking questions. I guess in the end, the biggest lesson is that no matter how long you've been with someone, no matter how much you think you know them, people can surprise you in the worst possible ways. Never in a million years would I have imagined Christina was capable of doing what she did, and that taught me to keep my eyes open, to trust but verify, to protect what's mine. It doesn't mean I'm going to become a cynic who doesn't trust anyone, but it does mean I'm going to be more careful, that I'm going to pay attention to red flags, and that I'm not going to ignore my instinct when something feels wrong. The Christina I knew for 3 years probably never really existed. She was a version of herself she showed me because it was convenient, and the real person came out when she was under pressure and desperate. That's terrifying if you think about it too much, that someone can pretend to be someone completely different for years, but it's reality, and I have to live with that wisdom now. My life goes on. That's what's important. I still have my job. I still have my house. I still have real friends who supported me through all this without judging me or questioning me. I'm building something new, something better, without Christina's shadow and her family over me. And maybe someday I'll be able to completely trust someone again. I'll be able to let someone into my life and my house without that constant fear in the back of my mind. But for now, I'm okay being alone, working on myself, learning to be comfortable with my own company. This experience destroyed me in many ways, but it also taught me I'm stronger than I thought, that I can stand up for myself, that I don't need anyone else to be complete or happy. And that, I guess, is something valuable to take away from this whole mess.